Obviously, to be a good studio musician, you really have to know your craft, number one. You have to be able to read. You have to be able to play well and relaxed when the red light comes on.
When I aspired to be a studio musician, I thought, what's the formula here that makes it work? You don't just go in there and play whatever you want to play. You have to make that thing work.
I think everyone relies on the drums and the drummer to be solid, to play all the correct parts, to not step on vocal parts, not step over guitar lines. And not every drummer has a sense of that, not in terms of committing it to a recording where it's going to be heard over and over and scrutinized.
But when they call you for a drummer, I mean, they didn't say, can you play? No, they wouldn't call you unless you know how to play all those different rhythms those days. And that's why Earl Palmer and Hal was great drummers. And they was good studio drummers, and they was busy drummers, and they just don't make drummers like that from the old school no more.
He did something that was a recording. He lived in a time when recording, they needed drummers. There was no click programmers, there was no sequences, there was no drum machines. If you wanted drums, you hired a drummer. He was the guy.
Hal Blaine very kindly took me aside and taught me a great lesson because us guitar players have a tendency to want to play ahead of the beat, with, you know, subconsciously, because we just want to be playing something all the time, you know. But he said, you know, he says, now I really like your playing and I think you're going to do great in this town, but you're playing just a little bit ahead of the beat, and so just, you know, when we're recording, just remember the drummer is God.
There was something that Hal Blaine introduced to the world of drums. Apart from the fact that he knew how to record drums well, he deadened his drums down, but he knew how to get a nice tonality out of them so that the microphones heard them in a very different way than when you're playing in a big place and you can have the ambience carries it through.
You used to have, you know, a snare, a tom-tom, and a floor tom, and a bass drum, and you played certain things within that tonal range. And what the Octopus did is that it just made you be able to go, you know, from up here to down here. And if you could get creative, you could come up with some very nice sounding drum licks.
There were a couple of Neil Diamond tracks that he did around 69 or 70 when Neil was recording in LA. And of course Hal was using the Monster kit and just some of his signature concert tom fills. You knew it was Hal. If you didn't know it was him, you still knew it was him. You didn't have to see his name in the credit. You knew his sound, you knew his style.
As a drummer, the recorded aspect was very, very important. And then Hal being the pioneer with all of the tom-toms. You know, when I heard Indian Reservation, I just knew. It came on the radio. Cherokee, I said, Hal Blaine, man.
Cherokee people, Cherokee tribe.
Because I had been listening to the Carpenters and I didn't become cognizant of how unique he was and what a pioneer he was in creating a new sound.
Hal left me his set to play in the studio that night. We were recording an album with Warner Brothers. And he had these tom-toms, you know, tuned perfectly. I had never seen anything like that before. You know, I'd seen the work they would have in a drum shop.
One of my first drum clinic, I was with Santana, so, you know, now they wanted me to do drum clinics. And it was a really big convention, the Percussion Arts Society, PASIC. And every drummer, professional, percussionist, every drummer, convention was there. And Dennis Chambers, Steve Gadd, Peter Erskine in the audience, and here I was, and I was like dry mouth, nervous. You know, I was on stage, right about to start my drum clinic, and Hal was in the audience, and he actually stepped through the audience right on the stage in front of everybody and told me a joke. And I started laughing, and he goes, "Go get him. it's gonna be great. And then basically I was like smiling, otherwise I wouldn't have been laughing, but that laughter, you know, through the years it taught me a lesson, indirect lesson, which is outside of the music, you gotta lift people, you gotta support people, motivate people. So that's one thing that Hal is really great at.
Hal has the greatest anticipation of what is going to happen. He hears his drums a different way because he'll tune them to the occasion almost. And I think one of the best reasons that he was used so much, besides his great talent as the drummer himself, was the sound of his drums. I think engineers found him easier to record than anybody else. He was always sympathetic to that situation. And besides having, you know, the chops and the wherewithal to do whatever you needed to be done, he also was very conscious of tone and sound and tuning of drums.
He had that wall of tom-toms that almost encircled him. And nobody else had that.
And I never will forget when I drove to Las Vegas, on the marquee it says, Nancy Sinatra, Hal Blaine on drums. This big marquee all over the thing at Caesar's Palace. Now he's making like $2,500 a week. Now, Irv Cotler's work with Frank, the father, he's making $750 a week. And I
Who said life was fair?
Oh my God, and then all of a sudden here's this Hal Blaine, I just left, Hal Blaine, all over the Caesar's marquee.
What a gig.
You gotta get it when you can.
Oh Lord, it hurts to be living with a dream of a drummer man.
Hal Blaine is magic.
Pioneer of the modern studio drummer.
He's paved the road and unpaved it, repaved it, and unpaved it, repaved it, you know, hundreds of times. But you know, he equals music.
Thank you, Hal Blaine, because I learned so much from you that you couldn't possibly know that you gave to me, but you did. And for that, I'm incredibly grateful.
One of the best. Hal Blaine is the essence of modern day pop music.
And the model studio drummer.
What do you call a trombone player with a beeper? An optimist.
My someplace